Welcome to a special series called The Global Crisis Monitor, featured on the Treasury Update podcast. Thank you for joining. On this episode of the Global Recovery Monitor series, Craig Jeffery and Alexa Cook of Strategic Treasure explore the new release of Period 15's COVID-19 Impact and Response Survey. This monthly update centers around the steady improvement of organizational liquidity, escalation of cyberfraud, changes to top concerns, and the current outlook on health and the economy. Listen in to learn the major factors impacting Treasury and finance organizations today. Welcome to the podcast, Craig and Alexa.
Thanks, Meredith. Happy to be back.
Yeah, it seems like it's been a month since we spoke last on this topic.
Yes, it has been a month. So 6 months into the monitor, we have just completed 15 survey periods into the Global Recovery Monitor. Why are you calling this period's report 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and 2 steps sideways?
Part of it's just to try to catch our minds with what's occurring. There's definitely progress forward. Not everything's moving forward, some's moving backwards. And then there's a number of areas that are sort of holding steady in different ways. And so this is just a placeholder in our minds for what's occurring. There's general progress forward, some sideways, some back, but on the net, we're gradually recovering from the situation that we find ourselves.
I assume you want to continue with the headlines?
Yeah, and just a quick preamble to the headlines. I want to thank everyone who takes the survey, who reads the reports, or listens in on the webinars and podcasts, and also to the partners in the Treasury Coalition. So thanks to all of you. The big headline from my side is organizational liquidity has been supremely stable and improving over the last 11 periods, which is about 5 months. 10 of the periods it's shown significant improvements. 1 showed contraction. So, 8 straight periods, 1 contraction, 2 solid improvement periods in the last 8 weeks have shown ongoing improvements. That's really significant for coming out of a trough and up the slope of recovery.
I'll touch just quickly on the economic highlights too while we're on the headlines. So both the 3-month and the 12-month outlook have shifted again, and the 3-month outlook has almost hit equilibrium, which is not a huge change from the prior period. And the 12-month outlook was positive, but has dropped just a bit from before. So this is indicative of a 4-month time frame to neutrality, which is an improvement from the last period, but it still has us sitting in Q1 of 2021 for that net neutrality.
Let's hear a little bit more about cyber fraud. What are the results and what do you think they mean?
Yeah, great question, because we asked about cyber fraud attacks and attempts earlier on during the monitor's cycles, and we had found that there was a net 36% increase in cyber fraud attacks and attempts. This time, on a net basis, it's 46%. So this is really a situation of the criminals taking advantage of people working from home, continuing to up their game electronically, and we've gone from what I would consider very bad to worse in the cyber fraud arena. So this has a lot of implications for how we protect our information and our payment processes. Definitely an area to focus on.
Interesting. Were there any changes to the top concerns from the prior period?
So one of the forced ranking sections we have with 7 items, we do a measurement about, what's the top one? Well, staff safety moved up to the number 1 position for those selecting as their top concern. Direct financial impact of the business and country preparedness tied for number 2. There's a little bit of an adjustment there. Direct financial impact of the business is oftentimes 1. This has slid back to number 2. And then access to liquidity was number 3. Though I will say, when you average out all of the rankings, financial impact still comes up number 1. Recession in regions comes up number 2, though those are not listed as the top issue that they have. So just interesting to see how some of this is settling out. From the weekly top concerns from our second forced ranking list, which is 8 items, is exactly the same order as last period, from COVID response impact to elections to civil unrest in North America, COVID death rate, all the way down to Brexit, that had the exact same order as last period. This is one of those 2 steps sideways. This is an example of that order really settled out in the last 2 months.
How are the time estimates for health and financial normalcy looking?
I'll take this one. So the inflection point is about the same as the prior period, which is sitting at about 4 months. And then the COVID-19 fatality peak point has pushed out from a little over 2 months to about 3 months. The overall health outlook, which is the extension of time until the COVID-19 becomes a minor health issue, has really stayed consistent at about 11 months. And then financial normalcy in individual businesses came in at 11 months again, which is also consistent to the prior period and the period before that. And so that's been sitting at 11 months for about the last quarter or 12 weeks of the monitor so far.
Each period, I typically ask you about AR and fiscal policy. Any changes on the negative outlooks here?
There has been a couple of changes. So of the 6 access to liquidity measures that we look at, 4 were ranked at least positive and 2 were ranked negative. And the 2 negative ranking ones were the normal negative ranking ones for the survey. So AR was slightly negative again. And then the fiscal activities and policy were the most negative again.
Before we wrap up the episode, what do we need to be thinking about for the weeks ahead? Craig?
Yeah, Meredith. So a couple things, we're looking at is the idea of staff expansion or contraction. We asked that in the industry. That's still quite negative. It's, almost identical to last period's view. About 33% of organizations on a net basis expect staffing to contract in their industry. So we want to keep watching that. I said that last time, and it didn't move at all. So that's another area to watch. The Fed guidance on keeping interest rates low has an impact on borrowing and interest rate hedging on just under 20% of firms. So that's another area. And then the last thing to look at is the work from the office, work from home. So this remote or work from home. We did take some questions on this and measurements. If you look at those that are expecting to work from the office and what the return is, it looks like July is a time frame when we'll have, more than half of organizations with more than half of their staff back at the office. So just a couple things to think about.
Great. Well, thank you both for this new update. I look forward to speaking with you next month as we continue monitoring the global state of recovery. Stay safe. We wanted to encourage you to take the Global Crisis Monitor survey repeatedly while it's live. It runs from Wednesday to Tuesday every week. You can go to treasurycoalition.com and follow the links. Add your voice and insight so that as a profession, we can take positive and knowledgeable steps to move our organizations and nations forward. Invest 5 minutes each week at treasurycoalition.com and get great information and insights while helping our profession and organizations.
This podcast is provided for informational purposes only, and statements made by Strategic Treasurer LLC on this podcast are not intended as legal, business, consulting, or tax advice. For more information, visit and bookmark strategictreasurer.com.